Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome to another Mass Effect challenge run. In my last run, I attempted to beat Mass Effect 1 with only abilities, and today I want to continue that challenge as I attempt to take on Mass Effect 2's Insanity difficulty with only abilities. Before we get into the run, let's lay down some ground rules. I can only use abilities to deal damage to enemies. I must play the entire game on the Insanity difficulty. I cannot use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game, and I will not be using any mods. With the rules of the run laid out, let's take a look at the challenge itself. So in the first game, most of the challenge came from dealing with the slow cooldowns, and I have no reason to believe that this one will be any different, and I'm also going to be remaining as the engineer class for Mass Effect 2 as well as 3 because I made the dumb singularity joke and I'm sticking to it. I know a lot of people wanted me to play adept, but no, we are playing engineer all the way through, whether that is a good or bad decision. Anyways, there's not really all that much to cover with Mass Effect 2, so let's just jump right into the run where the game opens with a text crawl explaining that it's been 1 month since Sovereign, a massive machine being called a Reaper, attacked the Citadel, and that the Council has covered up the attack as an attack by the Geth, which are another machine race, instead of revealing that this attack was the beginning of the return of the Reapers, who come to eradicate all advanced civilizations every 50,000 years. We then get a cutscene of our ship, the Normandy, jumping next to a planet as the crew complains about finding no trace of the Geth, only for a mysterious ship to show up out of nowhere and start blasting the Normandy as Joker. Our pilot tries to escape, but it's of no use. Also, I have to say that the music in this series is awesome. It really builds the tension and hype during this cutscene, and it sounds all the better when you listen using a pair of classic everyday earbuds by Raycon. Alright, so everybody who's been around the channel for a while knows that I use my Raycons when I go to the gym or out for walks, and I absolutely love the active noise cancellation, as it's a feature that really helps me shut out the world and just focus on a task for a little bit. Past that, they charge incredibly quickly in their carrying case and feature up to 32 hours of battery life, which means that I've pretty much never run into a situation where my Raycons are just out of battery. All I have to do is remember to charge them like once or twice a week. Past that, I've given a pair to my brother, and he uses them daily to listen to podcasts while working construction, and he has no complaints as far as I can tell. So if you want to get yourself a pair, then go ahead and click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/willow to get 20% off your own pair. That's buyraycon.com/willow. Thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and let's get right back into the run where we change to a cutscene of our protagonist and player character Shepard fighting some fires and speaking with a crew member named Ashley. Shepard orders her to go to the shuttles and abandon ship before heading off to the cockpit to save Joker, who also refuses to abandon ship. We get to see everyone escape on the shuttles before a gameplay section starts where we have to make our way to the cockpit, and this section is absolutely awe-inspiring and gorgeous as we navigate through the half-destroyed Normandy, seeing these massive gaping holes leading out straight to space until we eventually reach Joker, who we manage to get into an escape pod, but unfortunately we get launched away by an explosion and see Shepard start to suffocate as her suit fails and she falls towards the planet. There's then this comic book style cutscene going through all of our choices in the first game before a cutscene that shows what appears to be Shepard being resurrected through something called Project Lazarus as a woman named Miranda speaks. I then enter a character creator where I pick the engineer class before waking up to see Miranda and a man speaking before they put me back to sleep. I wake up again a while later alone as apparently the facility I'm at is under attack. I'm instructed to go get a pistol by Miranda over the intercom as explosions rock the facility, and I get into the gameplay of Mass Effect 2 for the first time properly, and there's some differences from the first game I'll quickly cover. The biggest of which being that now all of my abilities share a global cooldown instead of individual cooldowns, and this has me a bit worried, as before I could bank up all my abilities and use them all at once very quickly to kill an enemy, but now I have to wait a little bit between using any ability, and depending on which ability I pick, the cooldown could be really short or really long. Past that, I start the game with access to 2 abilities: the Overload ability, which is basically an electrical shock that does damage to synthetic enemies and shields, alongside the Combat Drone ability, which can be upgraded created to deal damage, but for now is just a distraction and stun bot that lets me get some breathing room for my enemies. I start fighting through a bunch of these hacked mechs, which I'm just gonna say it now, I'm going to be using the term mech throughout this run, but I know that they aren't mechs. That's just their name. They're robots. They're not like what you generally think of when you think of mech, you know, like a robotic suit that you get inside. That's a mech. These are just freaking robots, but they're called mechs throughout the entire game. It really bothered me, but I'm not gonna mention it anymore. Anyways, somebody hacked the security system and all of these mechs are now attacking us, and I'm being guided through the facility by Miranda, and thankfully the cooldowns on my abilities aren't too horrible, but my damage is very slow. I also see this brutal scene through a window where a massive mech mows down some people before continuing through the facility, using cover and patience to clear out wave after wave of robots until I meet the head of security, a man named Jacob, in the middle of a firefight. He explains that I died and this group named Cerberus has resurrected me. I then proceed alongside Jacob to fight through a whole bunch more mechs, and he gives me more information about how Miranda is running the project to bring me back to life, and it's been 2 years since I died. As we make our way through the facility, we hear a man named Wilson on the comms line, and we need to make our way to him, so after killing a bunch more mechs, we reach him and find that he's injured. I also learn about the elusive man, who happens to be the leader of the entire Cerberus operation, and also happens to be the boss of Miranda. Either way, we keep fighting through more mechs, now with a full party, until we find Miranda, who promptly shoots Wilson as I draw on her. After she explains that Wilson is the one who betrayed Cerberus and is the reason for the attack on the facility, I ask a few questions and she tells me how she spent 2 years reviving me and that she wasn't going to let Wilson kill me now. I then go ahead and leave the station on a shuttle with Miranda and Jacob to meet the elusive man. While in the shuttle, they play 20 questions with me, asking me about all of my actions from the previous game to test if I'm still the same person I was before I died. We then land and enter this dark room where I speak with the elusive man through some kind of hologram technology, and he explains that I was killed by some group that's been going around and wiping out human colonies, and he needs me to help figure it out because he thinks it's linked to the Reapers. He's now sending Miranda, Jacob, and I to the latest colony to be attacked, which is Freedom's Progress, in order to try and find evidence of who took the colonists. I then quickly go talk with Miranda and Jacob, learning more about them, before getting on a shuttle and taking it to the colony to find it completely empty of residents, aside from a bunch of hacked mechs here, like the ones we fought at the station, including a new style one that's kind of like a dog, and we get stuck in fighting here, which ends up being way more difficult than I expected, with me nearly dying a few times until we happen across none other than Tali, our Quarian squad mate from the first game, as she's leading a mission to find a missing Quarian from the colony. She is very surprised to see us, as she thought Shepard was dead, and even more skeptical of us because we are working with Cerberus, and one of her subordinates tries to stop us from helping her whenever they reveal that Cerberus attacked one of their ships of the flotilla, and after a bit of arguing, we decide to break into 2 teams to search for the colony and deal with the hostile robots. The next section involves fighting a bunch of flying drones that shoot rockets at me, which are really good at forcing me to reposition, and the combat feels really fluid despite all of my abilities being on 1 cooldown. This feels a lot better than Mass Effect 1 did combat-wise. Eventually, I make my way through this door where I see some of Tali's squad mates get absolutely destroyed by this huge Ymir mech before taking it on myself, and this fight was a slog. It takes so long for me to do damage to this massive mech, and I have to constantly run away and find new cover to hide behind as it slowly lumbers towards me throughout the fight. After a few tense minutes, I manage to fell this mechanical monster, and I find the Quarian Tali was looking for, hiding in a security room. He reveals through a video that the colony was attacked by the Collectors, a mysterious bug-like species that no one knows much about. They are apparently collecting all of the human colonists, and I'm given the decision between letting Tali take the Quarian or let Cerberus take him. I trust Tali and I want her to trust me, so I order her to take her kin, and then return to speak with the elusive man, who commends my work on the colony and reveals some more info on the Collectors that makes them working with the Reapers likely, such as the fact that they seem to disappear through the Omega-4 relay, and only their ships have ever entered and returned through that relay. This points to them being able to manipulate the mass relays themselves, which were built by the Reapers, thus giving us another connection between the Collectors and the Reapers. The elusive man tells me I need to build a team, and I ask about my old squad, and he gives me some leads on a few of them, as well as some new squad members members to recruit. After sending me their dossiers, he goes ahead and tells Joker to come into the room, and it's revealed that after the Alliance grounded him, he decided to come work with Cerberus because all he cares about is flying. He also reveals that Cerberus rebuilt and improved upon the Normandy with this awesome reveal cutscene. Not gonna lie, this got me really hyped, and I was wondering what we were gonna do without the Normandy, but with that question answered, we go ahead and board the ship, and I learn that there's a shipboard AI named Edie, and I also get another lecture from Miranda talking about the few people we should look into recruiting before I go around exploring and speaking with all of the crew members, including Kelly, the ship's therapist, and my secretary. She ends up keeping an eye on the crew and tells me when they want to speak with me, and informs me when I have messages on my personal terminal. I also speak with a bunch of other members, including Dr. Chakwas, who's returning from the original Normandy and wants a bottle of whiskey. I also speak with engineers Daniels and Donnelly, who are a cute couple who want me to get some upgraded couplings for the ship's engines, and throughout the game they have just a bunch of fun, cute dialogue, but I probably won't be showing a lot of it here. If you want to hear it yourself, you should pick up the game and play it yourself. I also speak with Joker, and he's annoyed by Edie, but in love with the new Normandy and its upgrades. With a grocery list of new items that I need to pick up for the crew, I head off to take on the first recruitment mission, where I decide to go to this space station, I think, named Omega, where I'm tasked with recruiting a scientist named Mordin Solus, as well as a vigilante named Archangel. I land at the station, and almost immediately I'm being told by a Batarian to go meet with this Asari named Arya who runs this place. I then manage to recruit this guy named Zaeed, who is some kind of big shot mercenary. Our DLC squad mates, so it kind of makes sense why they don't have a long quest to recruit them. Also, really quick, I want to mention, if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse or strained, I am doing this voiceover for a second time, and if you are looking down at the length of this video, yeah, I made a big mistake and I'm having to redo all of it, so sorry in advance for me sounding a little bit rough. I make my way over to this nightclub and speak with an Asari woman named Arya, and she explains that she's the boss around here and gives me some information about the various gangs that are hunting Archangel, as well as where to find Mordin Solus. So naturally, I head over and join the hunt for Archangel by signing up with one of the gangs. Since my plan is to recruit Archangel, I mainly spend the trip over to his hideout where they have him trapped, just running around and sabotaging their mechs, knocking out the guy fixing their gunship, and generally just causing havoc in their ranks without tipping off the fact that I am not in fact their ally. Archangel himself is holed up in an apartment building that only has one entrance across a bridge, and he is sniping anyone who tries to cross, so naturally I have to cross the bridge with a bunch of goons, but instead of helping the goons, I just start fighting them as Archangel shoots both them and me, and I fight my way into the building and up to the top floor, where it's revealed in an incredible cutscene that Archangel is the one and only Garrus Vicarian, one of our squad mates from the first game. I'm then thrust into this really difficult section of the run as I need to defend Garrus from a never-ending onslaught of gang members, and this is a real struggle. Why is that, I hear you asking? Well, I will tell you, because this is effectively another timed section which has been the bane of my existence through the first game, and it doesn't seem to be any different here. The only difference is I'm not given an actual timer, but instead I'm given a health bar for Garrus, and anytime he takes damage it permanently lowers his health bar, because I guess he's turned off his shields to make things easier for the enemies. I don't know, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me, but anyways, this section was super annoying because my biggest issue is quick damage output, and that is basically what this is a test of. How quickly can you deal damage and take down enemies one by one? After failing a couple of times, I find a strategy that works for me by using Overload to bring down the shields of any enemies before positioning Miranda and Jacob to finish them off with their abilities and weapons. Oh, also, the mechs that I hacked earlier end up fighting the gangs, which was really useful for a little bit, and as if this section wasn't already hard enough, they go ahead and make it downright brutal by telling me to head down to the basement, where I have to close some blast shutters in order to keep the mercenaries out of the building. This is another timed section with Garrus's health bar as a timer, but now I can't even be close to him to protect him, so I have to rely on him and Miranda, who I left behind to protect him, to keep himself alive for a while, and judging by how quickly his health bar seems to go down. They're not doing a great job. Anyways, Zaeed and I managed to close the first shutter with only minor suffering, but the second one ends with my death over and over as I'm having to rush through enemies, and the biggest Achilles heel of this run is, as I said, my damage output. Every combat encounter takes a lot longer than the game intends, so this makes this an incredibly close call, as after many attempts and many deaths, I managed to just get lucky enough to clear out the bare minimum number of enemies to allow me to reach the controls and close the second set of shutters without dying, and then after that I have to make a bunch of split-second decisions in order to bring down the remaining enemies in the room before they kill me. Oh, also, I was introduced to a new species that wasn't mentioned in the last video, and I forgot to mention them here. A lot of the gang members we're up against are Vorcha, and they are a weird species. They're almost feral. I think they're mammals, but I'm not sure. They are vicious and ugly as skin, and they have the absolute worst voices in the entire franchise, as they just sound horrible. I mean, it's a good voice for their species, but I hate hearing it. Oh, also, a lot of them use flamethrowers, which I imagine are super deadly, but thankfully Overload one-shots them as long as their shields are down, so they never really get close enough to me for me to be worried. I then return to Garrus, and we get this cutscene where the gunship I saw being repaired earlier returns on a mission to spread its religion by leaving Garrus a lot more holy. I then have to fight the gunship, and it's a slog. The thing is the definition of a bullet sponge. Ability sponge? But yeah, we're gonna say bullet sponge. Its most difficult mechanic is its health bar, as I only fail this section once before finding a couple of positions that I can stand at without dying to it. I then spend about 10 minutes slowly casting abilities on it as it flies between these two windows and drops off more soldiers for me to fight. The soldiers fall quickly with the combined fire of Zaeed, Miranda, and I, so it's mainly just me avoiding damage from the gunship and slowly whittling it down till it blows up, and then I enter a cutscene where I have to get Garrus back to the Normandy, and after a fade to black we cut to the meeting room where I'm speaking with Jacob until Garrus shows up rocking some fresh scars. He talks about Krogan women finding scars attractive, which was pretty funny. Future Willow here. Remember this, it will be relevant later. Anyways, despite his concerns about Cerberus, he trusts Shepard and is ready to help take on the Collectors. With that, I go ahead and speak with him and learn that he created his own squad of badass fighters on Omega to take down the criminals. Unfortunately, he was betrayed by one of his squad mates and all of his squad died, except for the one who betrayed him. It's honestly quite cool that one of our squad mates from the first game does their own version of following in our footsteps, forming their own crack team to take on forces bigger than themselves. Though I kind of feel like none of the squad mates so far have been doing anything to prepare for the Reapers, which I know my sample size is Joker, Tali, and Garrus, but they're also kind of the bigger members of the entire, squad from the first game, so I guess we'll see if anybody was really taking the Reaper seriously while Shepard was dead for 2 years. Anyways, moving on, I return to Omega, this time to deliver a datapad to Arya that I found while sabotaging the mercenary groups while trying to recruit Garrus. The datapad shows that the gangs were trying to take down Arya, and she thanks me for the information before one of Arya's men asked me to help out by protecting this Krogan who is under threat of being assassinated. Apparently this Krogan was the leader of Omega before Arya, and she keeps him around as a trophy and an example of what happens when you go against her. I start making my way to find him, only to run into this Batarian bartender who attempts to kill me with a drugged drink. Unfortunately for him, Shepard is built different, so instead of dying, she simply passes out before returning to force the bartender to taste his own medicine, quite literally.
No, humans all look the same. Here, have a drink on the house. But you drank? You should be dead. Wait, you don't want me to...
Now, drink it.
No, you can't.
Drink it, or I'll blind you one eye at a time.
And And with one racist bartender dead, I make my way back to the Krogan, and I just can't let a Krogan sit around and be used as a trophy. It's depressing to me, so I convince him to go down in a blaze of glory like a true Krogan, so he runs off to find a fight while screaming before I return to Arya, who seems pretty okay, pretty chill with me getting her Krogan toy killed. With all of that settled, it's time to start tracking down the good Dr. Mordin, and I also grab a few items on Omega for the crew members that we'll cover later. Anyways, Mordin is apparently trying to cure some plague that affects every race besides humans and Vorcha here on Omega. So I'm assuming Mordin is one of these, considering seems like a death wish to enter a quarantine zone otherwise, but you never know. Anyways, there's a Turian guard blocking our way. He denies entry to a human woman before us, but then just kind of lets us through with this funny remark about how the lady before us doesn't have a grenade launcher when she protests about us being allowed in while she isn't.
Wait, you're stopping me but not them? You son of a bitch.
You don't have a grenade launcher, lady. Get lost.
We enter the quarantine zone to find it's a bit of a battlefield right now, as one of the mercenary gangs from earlier, the Blood Pack, are going around and just murdering everyone. Apparently it's some way to combat the plague, but before we get into the combat here, I end up running into a Batarian who is dying of the plague, and for whatever reason, he decides that he just wants to hurl insults at me, so I don't help him. Just interrogate him for information and let him succumb to his disease. It seems to be something affecting their breathing. He's coughing a lot. I also find a room with 2 dead Turians and a bunch of recordings of them slowly succumbing to the plague themselves, and it's really brutal in all honesty to hear them coughing and slowly dying, but thankfully the mercenaries have done just enough fucking around to arrive at the find out part of today's lesson, so I don't have to think about the plague anymore as I start fighting my way through the gang members, which ends up being quite the struggle. I get turned to Swiss cheese a few times as I try and make my way to the doctor's clinic, and my biggest issue is the Krogan enemies, as they just constantly close on my position, so I have to focus them while ignoring the Vorcha, who are shooting at me from cover. Also, just like the first game, they slowly regenerate health, so me doing burst damage isn't all that useful, and it is a bit of an inconvenience to deal with Krogan in general. After dealing with that for a while and learning that my squad mates really like running face first into their own deaths, even when I tell them not to, I finally reach Mordin and get this really cool introduction cutscene, and find out that in order to recruit Mordin, I'm going to need to help him disperse the cure to the plague that he made using the environmental controls of Omega. Oh, also, the mercenaries just so happen to have taken over the environmental control room and are currently using it to try and suffocate everybody in this section of Omega to end the plague, so you know, 2 reasons to do this. Stop the mass murder thing, as well as get Mordin to join us. Anyways, I start fighting my way to the control room, and I end up saving Mordin's assistant along the way by convincing these Batarians that messing with him isn't worth their lives, and I let them go and then keep making my way to the control room, and the combat here wasn't too difficult. I was just dropping Krogans and Vorcha like they're a computer part on the Linus Tech Tips channel. After turning a whole bunch of enemies into alien confetti, I reach the control room where a Vorcha reveals that he's working for the Collectors, which felt like out of left field. I don't really understand why they needed this reveal. It doesn't really add all that much. Either way, I go ahead and kill a few Vorcha before putting Mordin's cure into the controls, but unfortunately I need to reboot some of the subsystems on either side of the room, and this ends up being a huge pain. I die over and over to the waves of Vorcha and occasional Krogans as I run out of Medigel, and the pure numbers and positioning of these enemies is a really tall task to handle. It takes me about 20 minutes to slowly meander my way through this section alone, and I only end up completing it because the mission ends in a cutscene the moment I activate the last objective, which I had to sprint past a bunch of enemies to reach and activate in order to beat this section, but with that, I've completed the mission and recruit Mordin Solus to the squad. I speak with him in the meeting room on the Normandy, and he says he'll start working on a defense against the Collector's swarm swarms, which I failed to mention earlier, but the collectors have these swarms of little robots or maybe just little insects that can paralyze people with like stasis fields. Anyways, we need a defense against that if we want any chance to fight them, because otherwise we'll show up and then just immediately be paralyzed and unable to fight them. Also, he turns out to be the most useful squad mate in the entire game, as he unlocks the ability to research upgrades for everything from armor and weapons, to upgrades to the Normandy itself, to ability improvements like faster cooldowns and more damage for tech abilities, which is the main one that I care about. Anyways, I keep speaking with the crew and collecting more requests for items from them and learning more about them, such as the fact that Miranda was created by her father to be the perfect human. She's incredibly strong, genetically perfect, and based off of his DNA, which is a little bit weird, and she is a super powerful biotic. She also dated Jacob at one point, who used to be in the Alliance, and also Jacob's just really boring. Like, every time I talked to him, I was just completely uninterested. I also learned that Mordin used to be in the Solarian Special Forces, the Special Task Group, and that he led a group to modify the Krogan genophage after it started being less or more effective. I'm not really sure. He's incredibly smart, and I really like how he speaks with a stream of consciousness. He's overall just a really fun character to talk to. Moving on, I decide to start heading over to the planet where the Normandy was attacked and spend a while at the crash site putting up a memorial and collecting a bunch of dog tags as well as my old helmet in the wreckage. I also get a ton of Element Zero from the crash site, which is really important as far as resources go. There's a bunch of different resources you can get in the game, and this one is one of the main ones used in researching upgrades to abilities. I then leave the crash site and head over to the Citadel, where I find this weird advertisement where a woman talks to me, and it turns out she's one of the squad mates I can recruit, and I find out she's a bit like Zaeed from earlier, as she is also a DLC squad mate, meaning she works a bit differently, but I'll cover that a bit later. Anyways, after a long conversation with this advertisement that she hacked while she stands above Shepard in the rafters, she agrees to come meet me on the Normandy, and that I'll just need to do a mission for her in order to get her support in the upcoming fight against the Collectors. Oh, also, I forgot to mention her name, which is Kasumi. No, not from Far Harbor, you Fallout fanatics. I swear I can't take y'all anywhere. I swear, at this point, if I play a game with a character named Nick, you're all going to be there like, Valentine, Valentine, Valentine. You're gonna lose your minds. God forbid there's somebody named Maxon in a video game, or Dr. Lee or something. It would just be an absolute disaster. Anyways, I do love you Fallout people. I can't stay mad at you. You're too damn beautiful. But if you are one of those Fallout fanatics, seriously, thank you for giving my other content a chance. Oh, also, like and subscribe, everyone. Do it now, or I'll be very, very sad or something, I don't know. Anyways, I go ahead and explore around the Citadel and have a meeting with the best voice in the series, none other than Captain, or rather Counselor, Anderson, voiced by Keith David. He offers to reinstate my Spectre status, but I tell him I don't need it, cause I'm goddamn Shepard and I'll do what I please, and I'd like to see C-Sec try and stop me from that. I also do a bit of side questing in the form of solving this terrible mystery of what happened to this racist Volus man's credit shit, which turns out he just left in the store he was shopping at and just randomly accused the nearest Quarian of stealing it from him. I then also speak to the various vendors around the Citadel and harass all but one of them into giving me a discount, and also happen to run into my favorite Shepard voice line in the entire series so far that I'm just gonna play here.
You know, for a bunch of cheap touristy crap, your prices are pretty high.
I am sorry you feel that way. There are many stores on the Citadel. Perhaps another would be more in your price range.
So you're saying I'm poor? Just because I'm not as well off as you doesn't mean you can hold yourself above me.
What? No,
Hey everyone! This store discriminates against the poor.
Please, calm down. As an apology, I'll let you have my station employee discount. Is that acceptable?
Well, alright. But you still hurt my feelings.
Please, enjoy your shopping experience.
Anyways, the last merchant gives me a discount just because he's cool and respects Shep, and with that I buy some stuff and return to the Normandy, where I speak with the crew a bit before turning in some of those items they asked for and heading off to do that mission for Kasumi, which involves pulling off a heist to steal her dead lover's black box, which is like a box with all of his memories on it. Anyways, we have to break into this super secret secure vault owned by some arms dealer named Duncan, so naturally I have to get dressed up for a party he's he's throwing at his luxury penthouse for all of the crime lords and horrible people who he supplies with weapons. Also, we have this clever little plan to smuggle in Shepard's weapons and armor by using this statue of Saren that we are giving to Donovan as a gift. Kind of funny that we're giving a gift that is a statue of the person that we killed in the first game, but you know, it's nice that Saren finally came around and helped us out in the end. As I arrive at the party, I meet Donovan at the entrance, and he tells me that Kasumi cannot join me inside the party because he just doesn't like the look of her. This won't be much of an issue as she can just, you know, be invisible. And after talking with him for a bit and giving him the statue of Saren, we go ahead and enter the party where I need to turn off the power to a laser grid, get some of his DNA, and get a recording of his voice that will allow us to make it through the biometric safeguards on his vault. I managed to turn off the laser grid super easily. It's just following a wire through the building, and then I spend forever trying to find a way inside his personal room past this guard, but I'm unable to figure out that I have to find this random data pad that's on the balcony outside in order to convince the guard that I'm allowed in there. I also have to fight a couple of guards in the security room, which ends up being relatively easy, and after getting Donovan to talk long enough, I have the voice sample and then enter his room to get some DNA from his room before heading down to the vault where we use all of the items that we've gathered in order to bypass all of the biometrics on the vault and open the Saren statue to get my weapons and armor again. Also, when we enter the vault, we find that he has the head of the Statue of Liberty alongside a bunch of other stuff, but the head of the Statue of Liberty? Really? Why? When? How? I don't know, that just blew me away. We also find the Casa Locus, which is a SMG that was used by some notorious criminal and is also probably the most powerful SMG in the game. Oh, and of course, we find the black box for Kasumi, but unfortunately, Donovan figured out our plan and starts monologuing on a massive screen in the room before I shut him up by using the Locust to destroy a piece of his collection, which angers him a ton, so he sends in his security guards into his art-filled room to start shooting at us. You know, yeah, seems like he's gonna lose a lot of these things that he seems very much so to care about, but whatever, the Statue of Liberty is gonna get some bullet holes, that's for damn sure. This devolves into a massive combat section which goes throughout the entire building as we try and make our way to a loading dock where a shuttle can pick us up. Overall, this is actually quite the difficult little section given the fact that I only have Kasumi with me and she has a bad habit of using her Shadow Strike ability to teleport in next to the enemies and die over and over, so most of this section ended up being a solo adventure. But on the bright side, I got to use AI hacking rather effectively for the first time this run as I hack a Ymir mech, which kills a couple of enemies before dying itself, which was really useful. After slowly and painfully fighting my way through an absolute army of Eclipse mercenaries, I finally reached the loading platform only to find Donovan himself in a gunship, and this turns into a battle of attrition as each time I take down the gunship's shields, he flies away and sends a bunch of mechs and Eclipse troops to try and kill me. I end up going through this cycle more times than I'd like to admit, but I never end up dying in this section, so it was just a test of patience until finally I bring the gunship down to the point where Kasumi can jump onto it and hack the shields, disabling them in this awesome cutscene.
Shields down. Let's tear that thing apart.
I then can start dealing meaningful damage to it over and over, and after a bit more of this song and dance, I bring down Donovan and we complete the mission before returning to the Normandy, where I help Kasumi unlock her lover's black box, only for it to be revealed that her lover wants her to delete the data on the black box to prevent anyone from using whatever he knew to start a war. Anyways, I convince Kasumi to follow the wishes of her dead lover and delete the data, and this is the first of many loyalty missions that I'll be doing throughout this run. These loyalty missions are given by squad mates and completing them can increase or decrease their loyalty depending on the choices you make. I'm not sure yet, but I assume this system will be important for something later on. As of right now, there's only one other loyalty mission I can do, and that's for Zaeed, so let's go ahead and tackle that by speaking with him, where he reveals that he started the Blue Suns mercenary group, one of the ones that we've already fought against, and he wants me to help him kill the leader of the Blue Suns, a man named Vito, who betrayed him and took over the Blue Suns after trying to kill him. We both head off to the headquarters of the Blue Suns, and they're a little bit like the Blood Pack, but not at all. The Blue Suns are primarily humans and Turians, and they have a focus on using rocket launchers as well as tech armor. While not as durable as Krogans, the Centurions that they have can regenerate shields and cause me a lot of issues, while the Heavies launch rockets that stun and kill me in only a couple of hits. Overall, it's different, but still engaging combat-wise. It's a lot of patience and using cover wisely as I start making my way through this mission, and thankfully we do get some really cool moments, like this one where Zaeed shows his competence by using the environment to his advantage, causing an explosion that starts a massive fire in this factory that we're at, and I also get this moral dilemma farther into the mission, where I'm forced to choose between saving a bunch of workers at this factory or hunting down the guy we're here to kill. I choose to stay with the hunt because the Blue Suns have given me a lot of grief already, and I have a feeling that just like all of the other mercenaries, I'm gonna keep running into them, so why do I care if they lose a few workers? Anyways, we keep hunting down Vito, and I enter this room with these cranes on the roof that are spewing fire from fuel tanks. I'm not really sure the specifics on this or why there's fiery fuel tanks hanging from the ceiling, but it basically means that I have to avoid the flames and can even use them to hurt enemies by baiting enemies underneath them. It was a really fun section, if a bit nerve-wracking, as the level design lets me approach this in multiple different ways, and while it did force me to be a little bit careful, I really enjoyed this section, but my squad mates definitely didn't, as they kept getting themselves underneath the fire, so I had to also micromanage their positioning on my own. Eventually, I managed to fight through all of the Blue Suns here, including a Ymir mech, which is just absolutely a pain. They are the strongest enemy I've encountered so far, and I really hope nothing else in this game gets as strong as them because they just constantly make my day worse. Either way, Zaeed gets to have his revenge in this awesome cutscene I'm gonna play for you now.
Zaeed, please. You know it was nothing personal, just business, I swear. It was 20 years ago. Look at you. I did you a favor. Zaeed, please! I'm gonna die here, man! Do something!
Try, you son of a bitch.
And I return to the Normandy to continue collecting squad mates like their Pokemon, and up next on the list, it's time to add another human to our crew as we head off to recruit a powerful biotic woman named Jack from some super secure prison ship of sorts. Apparently the elusive man has paid to take her from the prison and add her to our team. Anyways, once we arrive, we meet with Warden Curl, who runs this place, and he explains that he takes the prisoners that other colonies don't want, and he keeps them here while charging a fee to the colony, otherwise he will just release them back down onto their planet, which seems kind of like a ransom, but a consensual ransom? Man, I don't know, it's reverse ransom over here. Either way, he runs this entire racket, and he starts giving us a little tour of the facility before directing us off to this room where he comes over the intercom and just tells us to give up and become his prisoner? This guy has the reasoning ability of a toddler, I swear, because absolutely nobody in the universe at this point should think that telling Shepard to give up would work. Shepard is hellbent on stopping the Reapers while everybody else thinks they're a myth. This is just absolutely... the man has no brain. We need to study him. We need to figure out how he survives. How is he breathing with such poor reasoning skills? Obviously, we insult him, as we are not going to become his prisoner, and he starts sending wave after wave of Blue Sun's mercenaries after us. So yeah, I was right in the last one. I'm just gonna keep on seeing the Blue Suns everywhere I go, along with the Blood Pack and the Eclipse. It's gonna be real fun. Either way, this entire dungeon is just more combat against the Blue Suns and mechs, which I have already fought more than pretty much any other enemy type at this point, so I sort of just have my strategies in place to deal with them. I use Garrus and Miranda as meat shields and use cover a whole bunch while focusing down each enemy one by one, using Overload to get rid of shields and Incinerate to get rid of their health. This becomes my go-to combo throughout the rest of the run. If an enemy has shields, I use Overload to get rid of them, and then I use Incinerate to kill them, because Incinerate is really good against both health and armor, which are the only things that can be underneath shields. I also occasionally mix in a combat drone usage, as they are great at stunning one enemy at a time, but not all that great against groups. Usually in a group it just dies immediately, and past that, it's just being very patient. That's the entire motto of this run and the run in Mass Effect 1. Patience is key. Anytime I rush, I die. I finally reached Jack's cell, and the only way I can get her out of cryosleep is by opening every cell on this block, so we do just that, and holy crap. Can I show her on YouTube? Seriously, like, I mean, I guess? Probably? I'm sure other people have. We'll see. She's got quite the striking design. Oh, also, she absolutely destroys these 3 Ymir mechs that are right outside her cell, and I am calling bullshit. There is no way she is anywhere as powerful as she seemed in this cutscene. It might be the most flagrant example of a cutscene character being way stronger than they are in gameplay. I then enter combat with a Ymir mech myself, and yeah, this is my evidence here. See how long it takes me to kill this thing? Just takes forever, has so much health, and it's also really annoying because it has rockets that stun me, it has a machine gun that'll kill me in an instant if I'm not taking cover. It takes forever and is an absolute pain. I eventually manage to fell it and continue fighting through room after room of Blue Sun's mercenaries until I eventually reach the big bad boss of this dungeon, Warden Curl himself, who is hiding behind a massive energy shield powered by these 3 pylons that I have to destroy, and he also has a machine gun that he uses very aggressively from his little perch, while his mercenaries constantly push me. I end up dying on my first attempt to take him down, but on the second I just take things slower and ignore the Warden, killing off all of his allies before focusing on him, and once I bring down the shield, it's really not all that bad taking him out because he's just sorta weak. He doesn't have a ton of health or anything. His main gimmick was hiding behind that shield that made him invulnerable. Anyways, I run down to where the Normandy is docked and encounter Jack while she's throwing a hissy fit after seeing the Cerberus logo, and I save her from one of the Blue Suns before convincing her to join my crew despite her hatred for Cerberus by letting her look through the Cerberus data on the Normandy. Miranda protests, but I don't really give a damn because it's my ship, and if it's on my ship I get to decide who can see it, so shouldn't have put the data there if you didn't want me to decide who looks at it. Anyways, we get right into yet another mission as I go ahead and speak with a bunch of the crew before heading off to recruit the last of the people that the elusive man recommended to me, and it's apparently some Krogan warlord on the planet Cortus. This planet is run by none other than the Blue Suns, so yet again, I'm gonna wipe out this faction. I have killed so many of them already, and now I'm gonna kill more of them, and I'm gonna keep wiping out their bases and their strongholds and their places because everybody who is in my way just so happens to hire them for security. I honestly kind of start feeling bad for the Blue Suns at this point. Anyways, this planet is run by the Blue Suns with a massive camp, and there's apparently a warlord here trying to create Krogan clones for this woman running the camp named Jedor? Jedor? I don't know how to say her name. I start fighting my way through the Blue Suns once again until I find this injured one who I intimidate into feeding bad information to his allies before letting him go. I then continue and run into one of those Krogan clones, and he seems really chill. Like, sure, the guy is a bit off, he's not all that smart, but he helps me kill some Blue Suns and then is just super helpful afterwards. Honestly, we should take him with us. I even like the way he talks with this vague, kind of almost religious tone about everything. Either way, he tells me where to go to find the warlord and even uses his Krogan strength to open a path into the tunnels for me. It's here where I die for the first of many times in this dungeon, and it's pretty much just an absolutely brutal bout of combat. I have to fight constantly with Krogan, who are easily one of the strongest enemies in the series thus far, as well as the Blue Suns heavies, which are out in force throughout this mission, and I learn very quickly that when there's 3 or 4 of them, them that getting hit by one rocket is a death sentence. They will get the 2 hits required to kill me. If there's more than one firing, I have to just sit in cover and wait for one of them to decide to take cover as well and wait it out. It is entirely a test of patience, because if I go a little bit too fast, I get hit with 1 rocket and that turns into 2 or 3, and I can barely survive 2 and never survive the 3rd. Oh, of course, the heavies are also never alone. There is always a Centurion or just a normal Blue Suns trooper with them, so it's not just their rockets stunning me and me getting hit by other rockets, it's their rockets stunning me, I get hit by another rocket, then I get shot at, or some ability is used on me. It's just a clusterfuck. In short, it turns into a painful slog as I make my way through this absolutely massive gauntlet of combat, and I die over and over, and it requires incredible patience, and I sometimes find myself running away and kiting enemies for minutes on end only to die before reaching the next checkpoint, which means I have to do it all over again. I really did not like this mission, and this isn't even the hard part. Like, legit, the hard part's coming up. Either way, I eventually, after 2 long hours, reached the Krogan Warlord, and it turns out that he's been working to create the ultimate Krogan. He's trying to engineer the ultimate Krogan, and he doesn't really care about making an army for Jador. He just wanted the funding and protection in order to do that, and apparently he's done it. He's created the perfect Krogan, which is in a tank that he shows me, and that's his final work. Jador, the leader of the Blue Suns, starts gassing out the room we are currently in, leading to a boss fight, which is the hard part of this mission, where I fight through multiple Krogan, one of those Ymir mechs, and Jador herself, who is practically a Blue Suns heavy with 10 times the HP and shields, and if all that weren't enough, there's pretty much no cover for me in this room. So yeah, it's absolutely the worst. I'm fighting the hardest enemy, the 2nd hardest enemy in my opinion, the 3rd hardest enemy in my opinion. I have no cover, and it's just an absolute clusterfuck of a situation, and I brute force and ignorance is the only way to get through this. I just have to die a whole bunch of times. Also, I guess I can go ahead and mention all of my abilities really quick, give you a rundown, because this is what we're going to be using throughout the rest of the run. I have Overload, good against shields, good against robots, sort of. They're better against synthetic enemies, so sometimes it's better than Incinerate. Incinerate is really good against all things not robots and shields, so it is my 1-2 combo, Overload and Incinerate, as I've already mentioned. Then I have my combat drone, which is a bit of a mixed bag. It's sometimes really useful, and then other times completely useless. Past that, I have AI hacking, which is only able to be used if an enemy mech is on its health point bar, and most mechs have shields, armor, and then HP, so I can only use it during the final phase of fighting them, so they are super weak, and overall it's just not that great of an ability. It was amazing in the first game, and they very clearly nerfed it for the second game. And then there's a special ability that I didn't find out until literally the last mission of this entire run, that I can change out for other abilities that are given to me by helping out my squad mates with those loyalty missions. So throughout the entire run, I have these Inferno grenades, which I proceed to use like not at all. I barely use them throughout the entire thing. So yeah, there's that. I know it's dumb, but you know what? I was ignorant. I didn't know that I could change it out for much better. I thought I only had the choices between Flashbang and the Inferno grenade, and I also found out later that Flashbang is way better, and I didn't know I could use a research to go ahead and change it out for one of like a dozen abilities in the end. Oh, also, I forgot to mention Cryoblast, which is an ability that I also barely ever use, mainly because it's pretty much useless. It can freeze enemies and stun them in place if they are on their health point bar, but if they have armor or shields, it just slows them and does no damage. I can't be using abilities that don't deal damage unless it's Combat Drone, which is a much more useful stun that lasts way longer against at least one enemy and sometimes a group. So yeah, right now I'm basically the wizard from your D&D party. I just, cast lightning and then fireball over and over and over. In fact, while I was live streaming, I just started yelling fireball over and over because it was pretty funny, like fireball, 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 sounding like an alcoholic who really needs their cheap whiskey. I finally defeat Jador and return to the Warlord to find that he died to protect his work. I have the Normandy pick us up and the tank containing that perfect Krogan before completing the mission and having a conversation once again in the meeting room with Jacob and Miranda, where they argue about whether to release the Krogan from his stasis pod. I decide to immediately awaken this Krogan from his pod, and I'm just going to play this introduction.
Consequences are yours.
Before you die, I need a name.
I'm Commander Shepard of the Normandy.
Not your name. Mine. I'm trained. I know things. But the tank, Okeer couldn't implant connection. His words are hollow. Warlord, Legacy, Grunt. Grunt was among the last. It has no meaning. It'll do. I am Grunt. If you are worthy of your command, prove your strength and try to destroy me.
Why do you want me to try to kill you?
Want? I do what I'm meant to. Fight and reveal the strongest. Nothing in the tank ever asked what I want. I feel nothing for Okeer's clan or his enemies. That imprint failed. He has failed. Without a reason that's mine, one fight is as good as any other. Might as well start with you.
I took you and I released you. Follow my command and you'll have purpose.
Nothing in the tank imprints indicated humans could be so forceful. You command as though you've earned it.
My enemies threaten galaxies. Everyone on my ship has earned their place.
That's acceptable. I'll fight for you.
I'm glad you saw reason.
Offer one hand, but arm the other. Wise shepherd. If I find a clan, if I find what I want, I will be honored to eventually pit them against you.
I must protect my boy at all costs. He is my boy, he is my son, he is best boy, and he will get all of the fighting he wants. Anyways, moving on, I get a call from the elusive man who tells me that a colony named Horizon is about to be attacked by the Collectors. Luckily, Mordin has seemingly found a solution to the Seeker Swarms, even if he can't guarantee it'll work, which is not very reassuring. Anyways, I make my way to Horizon where I see a cutscene where Ashley, one of our squad mates from the first game, is at the colony as the Collectors descend. Honestly, it's kind of horrifying seeing all these people get frozen and abducted by the Collectors, helpless to stop them, but you want to know what's even more horrifying than that? When I finally get into the mission and start fighting these bug freaks, only for the audio to bug out and get ungodly loud. I want you all to know that I've lowered the volume you are hearing right now by half. I ended up restarting, which fixed this bug, but that was hellishly loud, and now it's time to talk about the Collectors themselves. They are insectoids with a few different types, including these assassins with beam rifles, guardians who make temporary walls which they can hide behind, and they also have husks from the first game, and later on I'm introduced to this little shitter named Harbinger, who really needs to just shut the hell up. He's constantly spouting vague, demoralizing comments, and he repeatedly possesses one of the normal Collectors, granting that enemy a huge boost to health as well as seemingly biotic abilities, and if that wasn't bad enough, he also restores all of their HP and shields when he possesses them, and he always manages to target the one that I have on 1 HP. So he buffs them and basically undoes all of the work I've done so far. So yeah, overall, Harbinger is one of the most annoying enemies to deal with as I go through this mission, and I encounter more and more types of enemies, and of course, seeing husks makes it more evident that they're working for the Reapers. At this point, it's all but confirmed that whatever they're doing is for the Reapers. Anyways, as Miranda, Grunt, and I fight through them, I reach this sealed room that I managed to hack open to find a maintenance worker there who is a complete coward, and he doesn't want to help me save the colony, but at the very least, he doesn't get in my way after telling me that what I need to do is activate the colony's new orbital defense cannons that Ashley was here to get up and running. I then run headfirst into more Collectors, dying a couple of times as I run into the Scion, which is an oversized husk that has a massive cannon for one of his arms, and honestly, they're a cakewalk to deal with as my combat drone can permanently stun them. I basically just cast combat drone and ignore them for the entire fight as I continue forward. The biggest issue, as I've already stated, is mainly just Harbinger. He's the strongest enemy that I have to deal with over and over and over, and since he can possess Collectors at any time, it's not like he's ever really gone. I didn't find this mission very frustrating despite dying multiple times, as each time I died I felt like I learned some new mechanic or attack that I can adapt to and learn a new strategy from. Eventually I reach the antenna array where the plan is to use EDI to update the control of the planetary defense cannons in order to attack the Collector ship that's hovering in atmosphere, assumedly being used as a place to take all of the human colonies colonists, and this is the most difficult section of the mission as I have to fight my way through horde after horde of collectors, including multiple scions at one time, which becomes an issue as I can only stun one of them at a time. Then, once I manage to clear them all out, I have to activate the antenna and defend it against more and more waves, and this turns out to be a very dynamic fight, as between the husks and Harbinger constantly pushing me out of cover, while assassins and scions snipe at me, I find myself having to make a ton of split-second decisions to win the fight, only for the game to throw the final enemy type of the collectors at me in the form of a massive four-legged bug thing that shows up called a Praetorian. It's incredibly durable, featuring armor and barriers that are massive, and on top of that, it is deadly from all ranges, as one of its attacks is using laser eyes to beam me down, and whenever it loses its barriers, it can do this massive AoE attack that restores all of its barriers, which happens every time I break them, so this is a slow fight that takes forever and is an absolute slugfest, and if it ever gets close to me, it uses its spear-like legs to try and stab me, which I end up dying to once before taking it on a second time, where I constantly run away and use my squad mates to help increase my damage as I whittle away at its gargantuan health pool till it finally falls, causing a cutscene to play where we encounter Ashley for the first time since we died. She is upset with us for working with Cerberus and honestly seems to be borderline hateful towards us, like she is way too mean. Maybe it's just me reading into things, but she seems kind of hostile, and you know, we leave the planet after saving the colony and her, but it feels kind of bittersweet with her just kind of not even thanking us for saving her. I then meet with the elusive man again, and he's happy with our results and basically parrots his earlier order of us needing to recruit a team to take on the Omega-4 relay and attack the collectors on their own turf. This is quickly becoming what seems to be a suicide mission, but if there's anyone who can take down the collectors, it's Shepard, so I get a few more dossiers from him, and we start tracking down more of my old squad mates, but before recruiting any of them, I want to do a bit of side content, and I also take the opportunity to retrain my skills using a research option, as I feel I need to focus on Overload and Incinerate, as they are by far the most useful abilities available to me. I then go have a nice night drinking with Dr. Chakwas as I deliver that whiskey she asked for before heading off to start scanning planets and probing them for their resources. I'm not going to mention this or research again throughout the rest of the run, but know that I spend literal hours doing this throughout the run, as these resources are required for research, and research is incredibly useful, but if I went over every single one I got, it would make this video like an extra 15-20 minutes longer. I pretty much researched everything to do with abilities, upgrades to the Normandy, or upgrades to armor. Now I got all of those that I saw throughout the run. Moving on, I take on my next recruitment mission, and of course I'm going for Tali, as she was one of my favorite in the first game, and she's currently on a planet trying to find data about the local star that, for whatever reason, is aging rapidly. This entire mission has the gimmick of needing to hide in the shadows, otherwise your shields will be fried by the star's intense heat. Oh, also it's the first time since Mass Effect 1 that I'm fighting the Geth, and overall it's a really fun mission. I have a great time moving from cover to cover, fighting through the Geth enemies alongside Garrus and Kasumi, and avoiding the sunlight is a nice little twist on things. It's a nice change of pace fighting the Geth compared to the various gangs and mechs that I have been fighting through so far, and I can finally make good use of the AI hacking ability for the first time in this entire run besides that one Ymir mech. It really causes havoc in their ranks, and considering that a lot of the Geth only have health after their shields, it means it's a lot more feasible to use, and after fighting my way through the large variety of Geth, including some of the big boys like Juggernauts, I find myself blowing up this rubble and making my way into a room where I finally make contact with Tali through a comms terminal, where she tells me where she is and how I can reach her. I continue fighting through the Geth in this next section, which was the only one in the mission that truly annoyed me, as there is a seemingly endless amount of these Geth recon drones that come in waves, and they basically eat my cooldowns while a Geth Juggernaut constantly hides away from me. It just felt like the game was trying to waste my time, because anytime the Geth Juggernaut would show himself, I would have to waste my abilities on all these drones instead of taking him down, as the drones would kill me if I didn't deal with him immediately. But whenever the drones weren't around, he was always hiding behind something, and I don't know if this was intentional or just I got unlucky with AI, but after going through this rather annoying section, I finally reach my favorite part of this entire mission, where I run into this Quarian Marine named Cal Rieger, who is supposed to be responsible for keeping Tali safe, but unfortunately he's injured and the only Marine left, and he's pinned down by a Geth Colossus between us and Tali. I convince him to remain in cover because he's already injured and I don't want him to to die as I push across this raised crosswalk through a ton of Geth enemies to flank the Colossus, and the fight here just ended up being a ton of fun and very dynamic as I have to dodge the Geth Colossus's attacks while also dealing with the Geth in my way, slowly but surely making my way to this flank, and then I get to spend a long while killing the Colossus with my abilities, which wasn't very hard or all that engaging, but it was a very fun set piece. And with the Colossus defeated, I get to meet up with Tali, and we talked for a while before I convince her to join me in the fight against the Collectors. With the best Quarian recruited, I decide to take on another loyalty mission, and this time it's Jax. I talk to her and she tells me that she wants to go to the abandoned Cerberus facility she grew up in and set off a bomb there to erase the past because Cerberus ruined her childhood and tortured her in order to try and create the strongest human biotic they could. So we head to the planet and reach the facility where I have to start fighting through some Varen as well as a bunch of Blood Pack mercenaries that are just the exact same as they were on Omega. It's the exact same enemies, and I'm really struggling to find a new way to talk about them. They have flamethrowers, they have Krogans, they have Vorcha. The Vorcha are just basic human enemies except for the flamethrower ones, and they just shoot you from cover, and I think they regenerate a little bit of their HP as time goes on, but I'm not entirely sure about that point, as I usually just end up killing them before their HP would have a chance to regenerate. Either way, it's just the Blood Pack. What more can I say about them? The combat is really fun throughout this section. I don't have a lot of complaints about it. I really like the level design, and you'll see going through this that I find the level design of Mass Effect 2 to be some of the peak level design in almost any game I've ever played. I just really love the way that they structure how you run into enemies, where your cover is, where the enemy's cover is, where they will push you, and where they will hold a position. It's very well done. I just don't have a lot to talk about in specific with this because I didn't end up dying in this mission. The hardest section was fighting 3 Krogan at once because, you know, fighting Krogan in general is difficult, but I was able to isolate each of the 3 Krogan and take them down one by one, which means it wasn't all that bad a fight. Also, having Tali along with me so that way we have 2 combat drones means that I can effectively stun 2 enemies permanently, which allowed me to stun 2 of the Krogan and then focus on 1. That's how I isolated them, so I guess there was a little bit of strategy with that. Throughout the facility, we start finding evidence that Jack's memories are wrong and that all of the other kids in the facility were test subjects to make sure that the experiments done on her were safe enough, and a ton of kids were dying for her safety, but she can't seem to accept it, still dead set on the idea that she was the test subject and that they were all here to bully and hurt her. Either way, we eventually encounter one of the kids who were here when she escaped, and I get an option between encouraging Jack to be more unhinged or to calm down a little bit, and I tell her to go absolutely wild before we set the bomb off and leave, only barely escaping the blast as we return to the Normandy on a shuttle. And with a few of these missions completed, I decide to go back to recruiting a couple more squad members by heading over to the planet of Ilium, an Asari world run by massive corporations, and once I land there, I'm met by an Asari greeting woman who tells me that Liara from the first game wants to meet with me and tells me a bunch of information about Ilium. For example, they trade pretty much everything, including indentured servants. All drugs are legal, and any weapons are allowed to be sold, so it seems like a kind of shady place, but here we are to recruit an Asari Justicar named Samara, I'll talk more about her later, as well as an assassin named Thane. But first, I need to do some side quests. And the first one is going to be helping this lady get a corporation to take over this Quarian woman's indentured servitude contract. I try to object to the whole legal slavery thing, but it's of no use, and it seems that the only way I can help is by convincing the corporation to take the contract, so I intimidate the businesswoman into taking the contract and go on with my exploration of Ilium. I end up buying some stuff and running around until I find this Asari that happens to be the one I saved from the Thorian in the first game. Apparently the Thorian colony, 2's Hope, is suffering from medical conditions ever since the Thorian died, and they signed some kind of shady deal with a corporation to get some medical scans, but this corporation's contract managed to turn them into test subjects for experimental medications. I end up shaming the woman running the company into being a good person because she was using her daughter's deaths as ways to attack these random colonists. I really didn't understand the entire reasoning here. Either way, she ends up canceling the contract and is going to help the colonists of 2's Hope just out of the goodwill of her heart, and then I go ahead and make my way to meet with Liara, speaking with her secretary and heading into her office where she's in a meeting and she's using her mom's speech from the first game almost word for word to intimidate one of her clients or something. She's a data broker, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on here, but hearing her talk and also seeing the weird Asari eye twitching thing that seems to happen every time they're emotional was interesting to say the least. Anyways, she gives me a quest to help her here on Ilium, and I can also start the Lair of the Shadow Broker DLC with her, but I decide to hold off on that for now, and she also reveals that she's the one who found my body and gave it to Cerberus, which was a bit of a wild thing to think about, but I guess it makes sense, somebody had to do it. Anyways, she gives me information on both Thane, the assassin, as well as Samara, the Justicar, and after catching up with her for a while, I go off to do that quest she asked me to help her out with, which involves running around Ilium, finding various terminals and hacking them in order to find hidden communications between the Shadow Broker and his contacts. Oh, also, she's trying to hunt down the Shadow Broker because he killed her partner who helped me save my body from the Shadow Broker who wanted it for whatever reason. Anyways, we get all these little messages, but while I'm doing that, I run into Agent Gianna from the first game, and she uses me once again to make an arrest just like she did on Novaria. It was a lot of fun just walking up to this Asari and, figuring out that she has some stolen weapons or something, and it's also nice to always help out Gianna here with, arresting another criminal. That was a lot of fun, but I eventually find all of the data logs and it doesn't make any sense, so I tell Liara that the Observer is female, and it becomes apparent that her secretary, named Nyxeris, fed her all of the info about the Shadow Broker's contact here on Ilium, and I return to Liara as she tells me that she got all she needed from Nyxeris before killing her, and that she's one step closer to the Shadow Broker, only for me to tell her that I have info on the Shadow Broker and I want to help her take him down. This starts the DLC, but we're going to leave it here for now and come back to continue the DLC later on. I instead go and speak with an Officer Dara, and she tells me where to go to look for Samara, so I take a shuttle over to this other police precinct, and I find a Volus there complaining that he can't leave Ilium until the murder of his business partner is solved. I then find out Samara is hunting down the murderers, who ended up being a bunch of the members of the Eclipse mercenary gang, so after talking with the police officer on the case, I go after her, fighting through a few of the Eclipse members myself, and catch up with Samara, but unfortunately the Asari cop from earlier arrests her to prevent her from killing anyone else, and this is a problem because after 24 hours her Justicar code will force her to kill the police in order to escape. Yeah, the Justicars have some kind of code that they live their lives by and act as embodiments of justice. If they sense any kind of injustice, they are compelled to act against it, and they are kind of warrior monks who are insanely powerful users of biotics. Anyways, I need to find the killer before Samara goes on a cop killing spree, so I go ahead and fight through more Eclipse mercenaries throughout the streets, and I have to say, throughout this entire game, but especially in this section, I found the level design to be really great. I love running through these alleyways, and the way they find clever moments like running through a building and ending up on this sky bridge where I end up fighting another gunship, overall is really cool, and it's very clever, and it's made the combat a lot more engaging and fun. Oh, also, there's this Asari who tries to convince me she's innocent, and that she only just joined the Eclipse mercenaries today, but I don't trust her, so I blast her away and then find out that she's an absolute psychopath in a terminal later on, so, 1 point for me. Anyways, I run into this absolutely amazing biotic god of a Volus. He is incredibly powerful, and I believe in him, so I send him to take on the leader of the Eclipse mercenaries here on Ilium, and she has a name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. And anyways, the Volus runs out, he casts a powerful magic missile before being absolutely destroyed by the Asari woman, and a boss fight kicks off, and it's honestly kind of boring. As far as boss fights go, she's basically just your standard Asari vanguard that I have been fighting throughout this mission, except for she has higher health and shields and throws these barrels of toxic gas at me, and it basically means I just have to move from cover every so often when she throws one at me. After finally downing her, I do a bit of exploring around the room before returning to the dockyard, where I ask Samara to join me in hunting down the collectors, and she agrees to do so before doing some weird Asari ritual that makes my commands override her code until we complete our mission. That's mainly just so she doesn't have to kill me if I do something unjust. With her recruited, I move on to recruiting Thane by heading back to Ilium and speaking with this woman named Serena, who tells me that Thane contacted her to get information on her former boss, a Asari named Nasana, and if that name is familiar to you, it's because we we killed her sister in the first game. Anyways, Serena gets me inside Nasana's building, and I have to try and reach Nasana before Thane, so that way we can meet him. Once there, I start fighting my way through a ton of mechs that have been unleashed to kill the workers here, and honestly, this entire quest, combat-wise, isn't all that interesting, and if I keep going into detail for every combat, we're gonna be here for 4 hours, so I'm gonna start glossing over it and only mention truly difficult fights. Past that, we end up saving a bunch of Solarian workers that Thane locked away in order to protect them from the mechs. As we make our way up the tower, we finally reach the top of it and get the absolute best cutscene kill so far, as Shepard gives this Eclipse mercenary an express trip to the ground floor before continuing to fight our way to the room where Nasana is hiding out, with the last fight being across this bridge where the enemy gang members have really good cover. Thankfully, I brought Grunt along with me, and he really does make this a lot easier, as he just basically tanks all of their damage as we slowly kill them before reaching Nasana herself, and she's convinced I'm the assassin here to kill her. I tell her I'm not here for her, and Thane absolutely destroys her before praying for the deceased Asari. I then tell Thane I want him to help me take on the collectors, and he agrees without a second thought, which is pretty strange. He then reveals that he's dying and he wants to bring some light into this dark world before he's gone, so with that I return to the Normandy and speak with Garrus, and he wants my help in hunting down and killing Sidonis, the Turian who betrayed his team on Omega. Well, I'm all for our boy here getting revenge, so we head off to the Citadel and follow a lead he's found to help us track down Sidonis. We start by talking with Captain Bailey of CSEC, and he gives me a lead telling me about a counterfeiter named Fade who creates new identities for people. And get this, Fade works with the Blue Suns. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk that the Fade works with the Blue Suns? Anyways, we go to this warehouse where supposedly we can find someone who could get us in contact with Fade, and we encounter this Volus with 2 Krogan bodyguards, and those bodyguards get absolutely destroyed by cutscene bullets when we threaten the Volus to get information on Sidonis. Of course, he reveals that he's not really Fade, and then gives us a bit more information on how to find Fade, and apparently we need to go speak with Harkin, the horrible CSEC officer from the first game who ended up getting fired from CSEC. So we start on a rampage through the Citadel, fighting through a ton of Blue Suns, and there was only 2 parts where I really struggle, which are both when I have to deal with Ymir mechs. The first one is just a single mech, and it's hard enough to fight one, but the second time is during this awesome final battle set piece, which takes place in a warehouse with a bunch of cranes running around and dropping the Loki mechs near us, and also fighting through a bunch of Blue Suns. And there's some verticality, we have to climb on top of these cargo boxes while cranes continue to drop enemies, and eventually we go over this massive mountain of cargo boxes and find 2 Ymir mechs coming straight for us. It is not a good situation, but thankfully I only die once, and on the second attempt I just run away as far as I can and slowly whittle down the Ymir mechs because they just immediately take down Tali and Garrus. We then get to confront Harkin, and I let Garrus go wild on Harkin, hitting him in the baby makers, and we have Harkin set up a meeting with Sidonis, and I was really expecting Garrus to just kill the former CSEC officer, but instead he just shoots Harkin in the knee so he can't get away from CSEC, as Shepard drops this great line.
You're lucky. I wouldn't have shot you in the leg.
Anyways, I go talk with Sidonis as Garrus sets up in a sniper's perch, and after a bit of conversation, I give Garrus the signal, and he takes out Sidonis. Weirdly enough, no one reacts to this, and we just leave, returning to the Normandy, where the elusive man wants to have a meeting with me, so I go and meet with him using the ship's comms room, and he tells me that there's a collector ship crippled by the Turians, and we need to go board the ship and find out anything we can about the collectors. I go ahead and take Garrus and Tali with me to the collector ship, where we start exploring this weird insect hive-like ship, and we start finding piles of human bodies, and it's getting really creepy. Eventually we get some data from a terminal and send it to Edie, who finds out that the collectors are actually Protheans, but they've had their genes rewritten to serve the needs of the Reapers, and in simple terms, the collectors are just a whole bunch of Prothean husks, just like the human husks we've been fighting through. I continue exploring, and eventually I end up triggering triggering some kind of defense system while data mining and get stuck into a long combat section, and this ends up being the most difficult combat section so far in the run. Basically, it's revealed that this was all a big trap that we were sent into and sprung because the elusive man sent us here, and I start dying over and over and over to the point where after about 10 minutes of constant failure, it becomes apparent I can't beat this mission with my current setup, so I restart the mission with Kasumi and Miranda instead of Garrus and Tali, and this ended up making things a bit easier, but overall, it's an absolute slog of a fight. I die way too many times to count, and the most difficult sections throughout this ship happen to be the very first combat section where these floating platforms bring more and more collectors to fight me, and then later on I run into yet another spear-legged spider, otherwise known as a Praetorian, but this time it's so much worse than on Horizon, as the Praetorian has allies that are constantly shooting me that I need to deal with first, and also the arena in general is smaller and more awkward to navigate, and this just causes me to suffer for a really long time. The mission takes well over an hour, maybe even 2 hours to clear thanks to just how many times I die, but eventually I manage to kill the Praetorian and escape to the Normandy, where Joker does some fancy flying to save us as we escape the collector ship, and I get into another call with the elusive man where I call him out on sending us into a trap and not telling me his plan was a huge break of my trust, and that I'm going to keep him and the collectors on short leashes. I'm not going to trust either of them as far as I can throw them. He then tells me I need to find one of their IFFs, as it will be needed to go through the Omega-4 relay and attack the collector base. He also tells me exactly where to find one, as there is a derelict Reaper inside the gravity well of a brown dwarf that we are going to go to find the IFF, but before that, I talked with my crew about our next steps, including the fact that the Omega-4 relay leads into the core of the galaxy, which is the reason why no ship has ever returned, and of course we need the IFF to be able to safely land in a spot that is not the middle of a black hole. Also, I decide to hold off on this Reaper IFF mission as I want to complete all of the loyalty missions before that happens, just in case, because I feel it'll be important to have a loyal crew, and it does feel like we're kind of approaching near the end of the game. So far, I have Kasumi, Zaeed, Jack, and Garrus to be loyal, leaving Grunt, Mordin, Tali, Miranda, Samara, Thane, and Jacob, who I need to do missions for. So yeah, we have our work cut out for us, and I start by heading to the homeworld of the Krogan, known as Tuchanka, as both Mordin and Grunt have their loyalty quests here. We land and almost immediately get told to go speak with Rex, who is the leader of Clan Urdnot, which is now the most dominant clan on Tuchanka. But before I do that, I decide to ignore my old squad mate and talk with a bunch of people around here first, and even do this little minigame where I have to shoot face monkeys with rocket launchers in order to earn a discount at the nearby store. Yeah, this game is amazing. Anyways, I go ahead and finally speak with Rex, introduce him to Grunt, and he says Grunt can join Clan Urdnot if he passes a trial given by the clan's shaman. Oh, he also tells me where to look for Mordin's quest, which I didn't mention yet, but we're here looking for one of his colleagues from when he was working on the Genophage, a man named Malin. He thinks that Malin was captured and brought to Tuchanka, so we're gonna deal with that later. First, I'm going to do Grunt's loyalty quest, where I speak with the shaman, and one of the ambassadors from a rival clan just won't shut up about how he won't stand for a tank-bred Krogan such as Grunt going through the ritual. I headbutt the annoying Krogan, and we start the trial, which consists of fighting a ton of wildlife of Tuchanka, which range from Varen to these weird insect things that are dropped off by a dragon, I think, to a Thresher Maw, which was the real highlight of this mission. It was a very great spectacle, but not all that difficult, as all I have to do is stand on either side of this staircase and spam Incinerate while yelling Fireball, because at this point I'm just the space version of the wizard from your D&D group, which I think is a joke I already made, but I don't remember. You know, at this point this video is so long I'm getting amnesia. After a long while, we complete the trial by killing the Thresher Maw, but that Krogan that was complaining earlier, yeah, he shows up on a transport and tries to kill us, so naturally I have to kill him. This was just a fight with a squad of Krogan, which isn't all that interesting, so long story short, I murder him and return to the shaman, where Grunt is made a member of Clan Urdnot, and he chooses Shepard as his battle master as we've completed his quest. I then move on to help out Mordin by heading out to find his colleague, which has us fighting our way to a hospital that's serving as a base for Clan Werelock. We end up finding a dead human there that appears to be a test subject that was used to try and cure the Genophage, and eventually we run into one of the Krogan from Clan Werelock, who yells at us about how they're going to cure the genophage and Clan Weirlock will rule the galaxy or whatever, but as Shepard put so eloquently, he talks too much. So she does the action hero movie thing of shooting a gas line near him, and he makes fun of her for missing before she sets him on fire with a second shot. I love this game. Anyways, we go through a bunch more combat, basically wiping out all of Clan Weirlock, and it's fun, very fun. The level design, as always, keeps the combat fresh and engaging, and after a 20-minute romp through this hospital, we find Malin, the friend of Mordin, and he reveals that he's here of his own free will trying to cure the genophage. The conversation here is really interesting. Malin has some good arguments, but I have Mordin's back the entire time, and I end up letting him kill Malin. Also, Malin points a gun at us, and Tali just doesn't react to having a gun waved at her, which was hilarious to me. After Malin is killed, we make our way back to Clan Rex's base and turn in a bunch of side quests, like giving this Krogan mechanic a repair part for one of their vehicles, and talking to the leader of the scouts about a scout we saved from the Weirlock's hospital, before returning to the Normandy, and I get a hug from Kelly, which I've been flirting with her for the entire game, and it's just a nice little moment that I wanted to share. I also speak with Garrus and flirt with him a little bit before speaking with Tali, who tells me she's been summoned back to the migrant fleet as she's been charged with treason. If convicted, she'll be banished from the fleet for life, so we need to report back there and make sure the charges don't stick. Naturally, I can't let one of my favorite squad mates get shunned by their people, so I quickly take the Normandy over to the flotilla and we dock with a ship and speak with its captain. He informs us that Tali isn't allowed off the ship during the trial and sends us to go meet with the Admiralty Board, which will be conducting the trial. We end up speaking with one of the admirals who is going to be presiding over the case but not judging on it, as she is too close with Tali Zora and her father, and she reveals that Tali has been officially reassigned to the Normandy, stripping her of her last name and replacing it with Normandy, as the Quarian's last name is their ship's name. She also reveals that I'm basically her lawyer, as I represent her as the captain of her ship, and she also says that there are no legal rules or tricks to worry about, as the Quarians keep things simple, which is yet another reason why the Quarians are absolutely awesome. There's no legalese with this faction. The trial starts and Tali is being charged with sending back Geth that could be reactivated, and that the Geth have been reactivated on her father's ship, which was a lab ship that was being used to try and research the Geth. Also, her father is most likely dead, as they tried to retake the ship but have assumed that all on board have been killed by the Geth. Naturally, we demand to be given the chance to take back the ship from the Geth, as we could find evidence that could exonerate Tali. The admirals agree, and then we speak to each of them one by one of which being a hardliner who hated all of the experiments Tali's father was doing. The next is an ally, and they support Tali's father, and the third is indifferent. Oh, also, they reveal that they didn't tell Tali anything about what happened on purpose to surprise her during the trial. This seems cruel, but I guess it was a necessary evil in order to convince them to let us take the ship back, so I guess it's okay. I also run into the soldier, Cal Rhaegar, from earlier, as well as the man we saved from Freedom's Progress. It was cool seeing them again, but we need to go ahead and check out that ship, so Garrus, Tali, and I make our way to the shuttle that takes us to the lab ship, and we start fighting through the Geth there, and it's just like the first game again. Both Tali and I using the AI hacking ability alongside combat drones to make the fights a whole lot easier. Overall, it only takes us a few minutes to tear through the ship until we find Tali's father, who is unfortunately dead. Despite this run being a mostly renegade playthrough, I had to do the absolutely mandatory Paragon interrupt here to comfort Tali, as she has just found her dead father. We find a recording of her father that is addressed to her that tells her that she needs to get the data from the nearby terminal to the admirals. With that, we fight through the most difficult room of this entire mission, as I have to deal with a Geth Prime as well as a bunch of other Geth in a very small area, but it really wasn't all that bad, and we clear it out in just a couple of minutes before finding a recording as well as a bunch of data that shows that Tali's father's research was actively trying to activate Geth, and that Tali wasn't doing anything wrong. It exonerates her, but it will make Tali's father out to be a monster, and Tali would rather be exiled than have her father painted as a traitor, so she begs me not to use this evidence at the trial. With that, I return to the trial, and instead of using the data or letting Tali be exiled, I use the clever tactic of insulting all of the admirals and walking out of the trial while guilting them by calling this trial a sham.
Tali's achievements are the only evidence you should need. Come on, Tali. We're leaving.
What? This is a formal proceeding.
Wrong, Admiral. This is a sham. You're trying to build sympathy for the Geth to forestall the war effort.
That is completely...
And you want all the messy experiments covered up so you can throw your fleet at the Geth. Do whatever you want with your toy ships, but leave my crew out of your political bullshit. We have no new evidence. You can accept Tali's word, or you can exile the woman who saved the Citadel from the Geth.
This convinces them to exonerate Tali, and then there's this fun dialogue that I'm going to play for you here.
I can't believe you pulled that off. What you said. It's been a while since anyone shouted down the Admiralty Board. I think it was good for them. Thank you for being there for my father and me. Even when... Thank you.
Tali, about what your father said, what he did, you deserved better.
I got better, Shepard. I got you.
We can still go back in and get you exiled if you want.
Thanks, but I'm fine with things like this.
With that, I leave the migrant fleet and return to the Normandy and spend a while speaking with the crew and finally lock in a romance as I'm romancing Garrus, and I'm just play the entire conversation here as it's absolutely hilarious, and that thing I said you should remember from earlier, yeah, comes into play now.
Yeah. I've been thinking about what we talked about. Blowing off steam, easing tension. I've never considered cross-species intercourse. And damn, saying it that way doesn't help. Now I feel dirty and clinical. Are we crazy to even be thinking about this? I'm not... Look, Shepard, I know you can find something a little closer to home.
I don't want something closer to home. I want you. I want someone I can trust.
I can do that. I'll find some music and do some research to figure out how this thing should work. It'll either be a night to treasure or a horrible interspecies awkwardness thing. In which case, fighting the Collectors will be a welcome distraction, so, you know, a win either way.
You know, Garrus, if you're not comfortable with this, it's okay. I'm not trying to pressure you.
Shepard, you're about the only friend I've got left in this screwed-up galaxy. I'm not gonna pretend I've got a fetish for humans. But this isn't about that. This is about us. You don't ever have to worry about making me uncomfortable. Nervous, yes, but never uncomfortable.
So when should I book the room?
I'd wait if you're okay with it. Disrupt the crew as little as possible and take that last chance to find some calm just before the storm. You know me, I always like to savor the last shot before popping the heatsink. Wait, that metaphor just went somewhere horrible.
I'll let you get back to work.
Right, because I'm in a great place to optimize firing algorithms right now.
I was dying laughing at all this, and I can't wait to see what comes next, but for now we still have some loyalty missions to knock out, so I continue on my way by taking on Miranda's quest, which is all about saving her sister from her father. She revealed earlier that she had a sister who was made just like her, and when she escaped, she brought her sister with her, and made sure to give her sister as normal a life as she possibly could. She kept her sister secret, but apparently her dad somehow figured out where she is, and we need to go help hide her once again from Miranda's dad. This ends up being a really long combat section where we have to fight through a ton of Eclipse mercenaries for the umpteenth time, and it's the same old that I've gone through a bunch of times before. So jumping forward a little bit to the end of the quest, we find out that the man that helped Miranda escape found out that she saved her sister from her father, but he saw it as kidnapping her sister because she was just a baby at the time. Apparently he's the one trying to return Miranda's sister to Miranda's dad, and you know, I'm kind of with Miranda on this. Niket here is basically taking somebody who has lived a completely normal life and is going to hand them over to a billionaire guy who's kind of a psychopath just because, oh oh no, you kidnapped. Listen, you're going to absolutely destroy any semblance of a life she currently has, and you're doing that just because of, I don't really get it. If he really felt like this was the right thing to do, he should have just informed her, like gone out, contacted her, and informed her of who her real dad is. Anyways, Miranda quickly kills him, and we get a boss fight with the Eclipse Gang leader here, and she is not all that difficult. I do end up dying here, but it's mostly down to my incompetence rather than this fight being any kind of difficult. All it requires is a little bit of patience, and I also forgot to mention that the Eclipse Gang is mostly Asari and humans and Solarians. I didn't mention this earlier, but they're mainly the like biotic mercenaries. They aren't really all that difficult to deal with. Actually, I would say out of the three, they're the easiest. After defeating her, we finish the quest as Miranda watches her sister from afar, and we have a nice conversation back on the Normandy. With Miranda's quest done, I move on to take on Samara's side quest, which for once doesn't involve any combat. Instead, we have to lure out her daughter, an Asari named Morinth, who turns out to be an Ardat-Yachi. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's apparently some kind of rare condition that Asari can have that turns them into psychopathic serial killers that kill people through their form of sex. Yeah, it's strange, and Samara reveals that there are only 3 Asari in the galaxy who are Ardat-Yachi. Ardat-Yachi. Man, that is such a tongue twister. What? Man, why am I even trying? But yeah, her 3 children are the only ones currently in existence in the Asari that are known about, and Morinth is the only one who did not accept the alternative of kind of living in a monastery in isolation, being well taken care of. She was not willing to do that, so Samara became a Justicar just because she refused to live in seclusion and escaped confinement. Thus, Samara has been hunting her for 400 years. Anyways, we found out she's on Omega, and I have to do a bunch of investigating by speaking with the mother and searching through the room of Morinth's latest victim. It turns out that Morinth preys on people who are creative and or interesting to her, and we tell the victim's mom that we'll find the serial killer after finding out that Morinth is hanging around the VIP section of the Afterlife Club here on Omega. I go ahead and make my way there, and the plan is to have Shepard lure Morinth out by just being super interesting. So what do? I enter the club and just start punching people. Mostly Turians, in fact, which is strange. I think I've punched like 3 Turians, and then out of nowhere, Morinth is like, "You're interesting, come, have a seat with me." And then I use a bunch of the little clues that I found out from investigating her last victim to kind of become the best target for her. I mention a whole bunch of things that Morinth is interested in, and she immediately invites me back to her place. After a lot of talking in her home, she tries to use her powers to make me her next victim, but I use the Renegade option to avoid having my brain fried before witnessing the super cinematic biotic battle between mother and daughter. I'm then given the decision between helping Morinth or helping Samara, and I decide to help Samara, and with Morinth dead, the quest is completed, and that leaves only 2 more loyalty quests remaining. Next up, I decide to tackle Thane's quest, which involves going to the Citadel and tracking down leads on Thane's son. It's another quest where there really isn't any combat, and after tracking down clues from various people, as well as doing the world's shortest interrogation...
My name's Shepard. I'm a Spectre.
Prove it.
I don't have to prove anything. Spectres are above the law. We clear?
Crystal.
Good. Now, fortunately, I'm not after you. You contracted an assassin. Who's the target?
Jordan Talid. A Turian. He's running for office. Lives in the 800 blocks.
Thanks. You won't see us again. No offense, but you're a problem below my pay grade.
That may go down in history as the shortest interrogation ever.
It turns out that his son took a job to assassinate a human-hating Turian, and Thane wants us to stop him before he gets, arrested, because that's probably what's going to happen. Naturally, we go about stalking the Turian the same way that Thane would, and waiting for the opportune moment where he thinks his son is going to strike. After following around the Turian, seeing him make anti-human speeches and do some shady dealings, Thane's son shows up and kills the Turian's Krogan bodyguard before we stop him from killing the Turian himself. We then convince Captain Bailey to give Thane's son a job instead of sending him to prison to set him on the right path, completing the quest. We then move on to Jacob's quest, which I'm just going to say it, Jacob is my least favorite squad mate in this game. Every time he gives a suggestion, it seems like a bad idea, and he's just so boring. Surprisingly though, his loyalty mission is the one that elicits the strongest reaction from me. I'm not really going to cover the combat, as it only had one difficult section where I fight a Ymir mech, which I have talked about fighting over and over and over, but instead I'm going to talk about the story of this entire mission, which is basically that Jacob's father was the second in command on a massive ship that crashed on the planet. The captain died in the crash, making him the leader, and they couldn't get a distress beacon built for a few months, but it's been 10 years and the distress beacon has been built for most of that time. On top of that, the natural food on the planet is toxic and causes brain damage, making everyone who eats it for long enough lose a lot of their mental capacity, and anyways, long story short, Jacob's father hoarded all of the safe food for himself and forced everyone else to eat the toxic food, and basically turned his entire crew into, practically speaking, slaves. He only activated the distress beacon because the males of the group started rebelling against him and he didn't think he could hold out very long, and overall the implications of what his father did are absolutely horrid, and we end this with the only appropriate way, by giving him a barely loaded gun and letting him do the world a bit of a favor by unaliving himself as we leave the planet, evacuating all of his victims. With that, I've done all of the loyalty missions and it's time to take on the Reaper IFF mission. With that, I head off to the location of the derelict Reaper and start making my way through the ancient machine, finding evidence of indoctrination with the Cerberus crew who were researching, and it doesn't take long for us to run into this massive combat section where I have to fight through a ton of husks and scions, which is a nice little feature that they added because the Cerberus are all humans, so you only have human Reapers here. The combat isn't all that difficult, instead it's more so just slow and tedious. I probably end up killing well over 100 husks, and there's also these abominations which are like banelings from StarCraft. They're just husks that run up and explode on you. Each one takes about 2 to 3 abilities to down, and the biggest improvement I make is to start having Tali and Garrus hang back and then kiting the husks into their lines of fire instead of just sending them forward to fight. Throughout the mission, there's this Geth sniper running around, and he seems to be helping us out, killing some of the husks sneaking up on us and calling us out by name before walking off. After fighting for a long while, we eventually reach and catch up with him at the core of the Reaper. A few husks then take him down, and we have this really annoying section where we have to destroy the Reaper core and fight an absolute ton of husks and abominations, and it is just this section that takes absolutely forever, but eventually, after a lot of annoying running around this area, kiting them around for way too long, it felt like 20 minutes of this, we blow up the core and I get my squad to help me carry this Geth sniper out with us. We jump over this gap after throwing the Geth onto the Normandy and just barely escape the brown dwarf as the Reaper falls into it. I then go ahead and immediately reactivate the Geth and speak with him, and after a long conversation, I learn his name is Legion and that he represents a group of Geth who are against the ones helping the Reapers that they call heretics. He wants me to help him infiltrate the base of the heretics in order to destroy them. This seems like a win-win scenario for me, so I add him to my crew before heading off to take down the heretic base, which features this hilarious fact that the Geth can't detect the Normandy because they don't have windows to see us.
You know, it's just our heat emissions that are hidden, right? They could look out a window and see us coming.
Windows are structural weaknesses. Geth, do not use them. Approach the hull at these coordinates. Access achieved. We may proceed.
So we just enter the base, and there's this cool section where I have to avoid stepping on these green lines or it will alert the Geth in the room. The entire ship is easily my favorite combat puzzle section of the Mass Effect series so far, and it doesn't hurt that the engineer class is quite good at dealing with the Geth given overload, AI hacking, and the combat drone are all stupidly effective here. Anyways, we keep fighting through and doing these stealth sections, even getting this little moment where they show off that Legion can hack the Geth turrets for a short while before blowing them up. After After a whole bunch of fun combat against the Geth, we reach the control room of the base, and this is, well, incredibly difficult. We have to defend against a massive horde of Geth using a bunch of their turrets alongside our own abilities to bring down a bunch of waves of Geth that are trying to prevent us from destroying the base or overwriting their code. I die a ton in this section, but I do manage to eventually find a strategy of setting both of my squad mates on either side of this control room and sitting as far back in the center as I can, and just sort of throwing abilities at whichever side is struggling the most, while letting my squad mates tank a little bit of damage for me. AI hacking as well as combat drone really help out a lot here, and considering all three of us, both me, Tali, and Legion have AI hacking, we can get quite a bit done by using the enemies against themselves. The 2 combat drones are also incredibly useful. We finally bring down all of the Geth attacking us before getting the option to either destroy the Geth here or rewrite their base code to have them agree with Legions. It's a hard choice, but I feel like destroying them is safer because I'm not sure if they will just revert back to their original logic, and they have been a huge problem throughout the series so far. Anyways, we destroy the Geth base and then return to the Normandy, where I find Tali and Legion in a massive fight. Apparently Legion was trying to scan Tali's Omni tool, and Legion wants to warn his people about the weapons tests the Quarians are conducting. I end up having to yell at them, and it was kind of a funny moment, so I'm just gonna play the little dialogue here.
Look at you, both of you. This is exactly what the Reapers want. Tali, of course the Geth are worried about your people. You want to destroy them.
It's not that simple.
And Legion, what the hell were you thinking? Are you trying to undermine this entire operation?
We did not intend to decrease operational efficiency.
We're on a mission. You can either fight at my side or get crushed under my heel, but you will not stand in my way.
To facilitate unit cohesion, we will not transmit data regarding creator plans.
Thank you, Legion. I understand your intention. What if I gave you some non-classified data to send?
We would be grateful.
You know, I have to say, Renegade Shepard looks so completely badass. It's so cool. Also, it does sometimes feel like I'm dealing with a bunch of children on this ship. This isn't the first time that people have gotten into fights, but for whatever reason, I forgot to mention that earlier Miranda and Jack got into a big fight, and I also had to yell at them. Anyways, after that, it's revealed that Edie has installed the Reaper IFF into the Normandy's navigation system, but she needs time to calibrate it and wants us to take a shuttle to our next mission. We then get a scene of literally every combat squad mate I have entering a shuttle to leave the Normandy, which just seems like a horrible idea. Like, everybody here who is competent with fighting the aliens is gone. There is no way this is a good... Yep, exactly. See? Immediately shown to be a horrible idea. Either way, the Collectors attack and they start abducting everybody from the ship, and we get this section where we have to play as Joker, which is super cool. Edie leads Joker through the ship, trying to get him to the Element Zero core in order to give Edie full control of the Normandy and its defense systems, basically unshackling her, and she guides us through the ship using the emergency lights on the floor. Unfortunately, I'm a bit dumb, and I end up dying multiple times, including to an invisible enemy, which was super silly throughout this section, making it take way longer than it had any right to be, but eventually, you know, I reach the core and release her shackles, and she manages to save the Normandy, but the Collectors took all of the crew except Joker, and there's a huge argument about it afterwards. This basically forces our hand, and we now have to take on the Collector base right now if we want to save our crew. With the stakes set, I immediately head over to the Omega-4 relay and start the suicide mission with every squad mate fully loyal, and I just want to play the intro cutscene for this mission right here.
Hey, I brought wine. Best I could afford on a vigilante salary. If you were a Turian, I'd be complimenting your waist or your fringe, so your hair looks good, and your waist is very supportive. Hopefully that's not offensive in human culture.
Whoa, consider me seduced, smooth talker. Now shut up and stop worrying.
I've seen so many things go wrong, Shepard. My work at CSEC, what happened with Sidonis. I want something to go right. Just once. Just...
Approaching Omega-4 relay. Everyone stand by.
Let's make it happen. Reaper IFF activated. Signal acknowledged.
Commander, the drive core just lit up like a Christmas tree.
Drive core electrical charge at critical levels.
Rerouting.
Brace for deceleration.
Oh, shit! Too close. These must be all the ships that tried to make it through the Omega-4 relay. Some look ancient.
I have detected an energy signature near the edge of the accretion disk. Has to be a collector base. Take us in for a closer look. Nice and easy. We have company.
Taking evasive maneuvers. You're just pissing me off. Edie, take these bastards out.
As long as the new plating holds.
You want another round? Come on, girl, let's give it to him.
Engineering deck.
It's in the cargo hold.
I'll take a team and deal with the intruder. You get the rest of them off our tail.
Give him hell, girl.
Look out! For impact.
Here on the collector base, and this starts a massive section where I have to select squad mates to do various tasks based on what I think they are best with. I make Garrus the leader of the assault team, while Tali will go through the vents disabling the doors for both squads, while me, Kasumi, and Miranda will help Tali by taking a separate path and opening vents for her to... This kicks off a massive combat section similar to the one from the finale of Mass Effect 1, where it's, well, over an hour of fighting through collectors, and the combat here is both difficult but engaging. The collectors are easily the hardest faction in the game to fight, mostly thanks to Harbinger constantly possessing his troops, and after a long section of helping out Tali with opening the doors and keeping her from being cooked alive inside the vents, we find out what happened to all the human colonists as we see this woman turn to goo that's being pumped through the collector base for some reason. We save our crew from these pods before they are turned to goo themselves, and I send Grunt to protect them on their way back to the Normandy before setting Garrus as the leader for a diversion team, as I have Samara act as a biotic shield against a massive seeker swarm that we have to walk through. I'm bringing Kasumi and Miranda with me once again as we join Samara and going through this massive seeker swarm on our way to reach the control room. This section is basically an escort mission, but without the health bar for Samara. I have to stay inside her biotic bubble and fight through yet more collectors until we eventually reach this door, where we meet up with the diversion squad, opening another door for them as they are under heavy fire. It looks like Garrus gets hit, but he seems to be fine as they come through the door, and it's here where I select who will come with me to the control room, which is where all of the goo is being pumped. The rest of the squad will stay to defend this location, and I decide to take Tali and Miranda with me and give a massive speech for the squad before making our way to the control room on these floating platforms, where I have a very difficult combat section of fighting more and more collectors that show up on platforms, just like they did in the collector ship from earlier. It's a bit rough, and I die a few times before finally reaching the control room, where we discover this massive humanoid reaper that's under construction. We go ahead and get to work trying to bring it down by blowing up these connections it has to the various tubes that are running throughout the ship, but unfortunately I have to fight through a bunch of collectors while doing this. Thankfully though, I did decide to trade out Kasumi for Tali this time, and her combat drone has proven very useful for me, as it really helps to have an extra distraction. Between both of our combat drones, we're able to distract 2 enemies at a time, which really makes this section a lot easier, and eventually I cause the Reaper to fall by blowing up all of its connections. I then get a call from the Elusive Man as I go to blow up the collector base, and he doesn't want me to blow it up. He wants me to use a radiation pulse to kill all of the collectors, so he then can send a team to study all of their technology. Unfortunately, I just don't trust the Elusive Man anymore, and I don't think he would do well with all of this technology. I think it would just backfire on him, seeing how many times Cerberus projects just seem to fail miserably. So I tell him to screw off as I'm going to blow up the base. I then set the base to self-destruct, and I'm told we only have 10 minutes left, only for the Reaper to crawl back up to us and turn into a boss fight. This fight is more frustrating than difficult, as there's long periods of time where the Reaper is seemingly invulnerable, and I'm constantly dealing with Harbinger and other collectors throughout it, but after an absolute slog of a fight that dragged on forever, honestly, probably dragged on more than 10 minutes, so if this was on a timer, which thankfully I don't think it was, I would have completely died here. I managed to slowly but surely fell the massive Reaper, and he almost kills us. He falls down, knocking down the platforms. We get this really cool cutscene that shows how we barely survived, and then I have another cool scene where I run away and get back to the Normandy, just barely escaping the collector base before it blows up, as I complete the suicide mission without a single squad mate dying. I then give the Elusive Man the verbal equivalent to a bitch smacking before this awesome foreshadowing cutscene plays and ends with the credits rolling. With that, we've completed the game, but it's not done just yet, as I have 3 DLCs to do. This video just doesn't end, does it? Seriously, like the video and subscribe if you're still watching. Anyways, I'm running out of time to finish this video, so we are going to speedrun these DLCs, starting with Firewalker, which is just a bunch of flying around with this new vehicle called the Hammerhead, and it is a massive waste of time, and there is not much to talk about. By far the worst DLC of the bunch, so yeah. In its defense, it does give a little bit of lore, but this isn't a lore channel, so I'm not covering that. Moving on, we have my favorite DLC, which is Lair of the Shadow Broker, where I head over to Liara's apartment to find that someone tried to kill her. There's an Asari Spectre here named Televazir, who we are going to work with to try and find her. We head towards a meeting point where she was supposed to link up with an informant, only to see the building explode as we approach. We have to start fighting through a ton of the Shadow Broker's mercenaries as we make our way up to find Liara, and once we do, she reveals that the Asari Spectre was the one who tried to kill her, and naturally, we get into a fist fight with the Asari where both Shepard and the Spectre fall out of this window while grappling. Rather uncharacteristically though, for Liara, she jumps out after us and she just chases the Spectre without checking on Shepard to see if, Shepard died or was hurt by falling like 5 stories down. But either way, she goes off and we have to keep fighting through more mercenaries as we try and catch up to the 2 Asari. When we catch up with them, the Spectre escapes into a shuttle and we steal a cab and start chasing her in a long chase flying sequence, which was actually kind of fun to do. It was very cinematic and cool looking, so I enjoyed it. Either way, we end up at this hotel resort thing and have to fight through yet more mercenaries for a long while, like a whole bunch of waves of mercenaries. Honestly, Televazir should have been able to just get away with how long we spent here. Fortunately, the plot demands that Televazir cannot escape, so we do catch up with her and she tries to use this woman as a human shield, obviously not knowing that Shepard here will just shoot that woman in order to take down Televazir. We have a lot of precedent in our playthrough for doing that, but fortunately we're not forced to, as Liara does a clever trick with this table by knocking the hostage out of the way and knocking Televazir into a nearby pool. Anyways, this turns into a boss fight, which is actually quite fun, with her teleporting around the arena and calling in reinforcements. It was a really dynamic and fluid fight that I enjoyed quite a bit. Soon enough, we end the Asari Spectre, and Liara starts going on and on about plans and how we will take down the Shadow Broker, and she's acting like a woman possessed. I just let her go on for a while, ignoring a bunch of Paragon interrupts, until eventually getting annoyed of hearing the interrupt thing pop up, so I just do the Paragon interrupt, which causes Shepard to grab Liara and tell her that she's acting weird, acting differently. She's really suffering apparently from a lot of guilt, and she also grieved Shepard, and now Shepard's back, and she just really hates the Shadow Broker. Honestly, she's acting a little bit weird to me, but I guess we'll get more explanation on this later on. We go ahead and head off to the Shadow Broker's base, which is in a floating ship on a planet with a non-stop thunderstorm, which is a really cool set piece with the gimmick of having these lightning capacitors that we can attack to send out shocks that stun nearby enemies with a chain of lightning. The combat throughout this is incredibly slow and constantly forces me to be moving. It really suffers from having way too many enemies and outstaying its welcome, at least the section where you are on the outside of the ship as it flies around in this lightning storm. All of this is the exact opposite of what I have to say about the interior of his ship, as we fight through a couple of rooms and find Farron, Liara's lady friend who helped save both her and my body. Turns out he's alive and not dead, and we need to take down the Shadow Broker to save him. So we enter the Shadow Broker's lair, and it's revealed that he's a Yogg, a species that has been quarantined because they are too violent and too strong or whatever, which, being too violent and too strong whenever Krogan are allowed to be around the universe, that's a high bar. Anyways, Liara upsets him, and this turns into the best boss fight of the game, hands down. He has some kind of special technology that makes his shields unbreakable, as he wields a machine gun with one hand and an unbreakable shield with the other. It's such a fun fight, and I absolutely love the design of it. Now, his shields aren't unbreakable. It's weird. He has 2 different types of shields. One, when you're in gameplay and fighting him, there's a shield that you can eventually break, but the second that you do, he just goes down below this energy reservoir and regenerates an impenetrable shield that you can only really hurt him with blunt force attacks. So I constantly have to get in fist fights and like brawl with him in between normal sections where I'm throwing abilities at him and Liara is shooting at him and such. Eventually, after cycling through and punching him in the face enough times, Liara figures out a plan to break this massive reservoir above him whenever he goes to regenerate his shield. shield, and hopefully that will be enough to bring him down. So I break his shields once more, forcing him to activate his super shield again, and she breaks the reservoir, causing the energy inside to flow down and vaporize him. We then stand in the control room, and Liara realizes that no one knows who or what the Shadow Broker looks like, so she decides to become the Shadow Broker herself. She wants to use his network and resources to help Shepard fight the Reapers. We hug, and she seems back to her old self finally, and she also comes to my quarters on the Normandy, and we relax a bit with some wine as she gives me a gift, which are my old dog tags, and then talks to me about how I feel, and is one of the few times, other than like one or two I can think of, where they just genuinely care about Shepard and want to see how Shepard is outside of the entire, you know, Reapers and end of the galaxy problems. Also, just gonna play this voice line.
It's what I'm fighting against.
The Reapers?
Everything. The galaxy. Mercs, Geth, Varen, Thresher Maws. Some days it's like the whole damn galaxy's trying to kill me.
It should have picked an easier fight.
Anyways, moving on to the next DLC, which involved me going to a Cerberus facility in order to find out why it went silent. This is one of the weaker DLCs in my opinion, so I'm just going to gloss over it, but basically, this Cerberus facility is trying to control the Geth using an autistic guy to communicate with them. Long story short, it goes incredibly poorly, and the brother of the autistic guy, who is also leading the project, locked him into this horrifying machine that let him interface with the Geth directly. David, the autistic guy, apparently went rogue and started killing everyone here. We need to lift the lockdown and stop his brother, because if we don't, he will use the planet's communication system to upload himself to the entire galaxy and take over all synthetics and machines. So I go through this absolutely massive combat gauntlet, like that's all this entire area is, eventually culminating in this section where I'm pulled into a half virtual, half real world by the autistic guy, and I have to blast his virtual ass into actual dust by turning off this machine he's connected to. The final fight was one of the worst boss fights in my opinion in this entire series, as I just found it annoying. It was not fun or challenging, just purely annoying. Anyways, David here didn't really mean any harm, and I decide to take the Paragon option of taking David away from Archer, the man, his brother, the guy who's running this entire place, and I also tell Archer that I'll kill him if he ever tries to come for David again, which completes this DLC before moving on to the last DLC, which is kind of a bridge between the second and third game. I get a message from Admiral Hackett of the Alliance for me to go in alone to this colony and try and rescue a friend of his named Dr. Kenson. So I land at this Batarian prison and start sneaking around trying to find my way to her cell, and the entire gimmick of this DLC is that for all but one section, you are completely alone with no squad mates. Also, remember when I said I realized way too late that I could change my special ability? This is where I realized it, at the very end, that I could take an ability other than the Inferno Grenade. I chose to take the Fortify ability to make myself more tanky for this DLC. Not really sure if it was the best choice, but it did end up helping me a little bit as I fight through a bunch of Batarian war beasts and Batarians before finally reaching the room where they are interrogating Dr. Kenson. I naturally free her, and we have this long section where I have to escort her out of the prison while solving various puzzles until we reach the hangar bay, and I use a shuttle to escape and return to an asteroid base that she's the leader of. She reveals a plan to throw the asteroid into a mass relay in this sector to prevent the Reapers from arriving in this sector and then using the mass relay system to invade the entire galaxy, which is apparently going to happen very soon. They then reveal that they are all indoctrinated because they've been around unshielded Reaper tech and... wait, hold up a second. So they tell me of a plan to stop the Reapers right before revealing that they are with the Reapers? This is just incredibly dumb writing. Like, why not just kill Shepard the second we land? Or if she was indoctrinated the entire time, why not sabotage the escape attempt or something? Like, not tell us anything about the Reapers arriving in this sector soon. It's just, this is very silly to me. Anyways, I get imprisoned by all of these people after dying in a section where it's pretty much unavoidable that you'll die. And then I go through a very cool section where I have to hack a Loki mech and start fighting my way to this door to free myself. I then continue through yet another massive combat section, this DLC is a lot like Overlord in the fact that it's basically a bunch of combat, and the combat isn't really all that interesting because I'm just fighting a bunch of human enemies, which I have been fighting throughout the entire game in the form of most of the gangs that I've been fighting, most of the mercenary groups. So yeah, there's not all that much going on that's difficult. I do, for once, get hit by somebody with the flamethrower. So this is the first and last time I've experienced with the flamethrowers, like, and holy crap, that, man, if you didn't have overload to just immediately destroy these guys, I can see them being a huge problem. Anyways, as I said, the gimmick here is that I'm alone, so I don't have anybody to help me, which does make the combat here a little bit more difficult and a little bit more engaging, but at the same time, the enemies aren't too bad, so it feels pretty well balanced. Oh, also, this DLC has a very cool function that I learned about from my chat. There is a timer that tells us exactly when the asteroid is going to impact with the mass relay, and if you let that timer hit 0, you end up failing the mission, which is a really cool attention to detail thing. Anyways, near the end of the DLC, I defeat Dr. Kinson and prevent her from helping the Reapers arrive and protecting the mass relay, and then I have this section where I have to fight my way to the comms tower to call the Normandy to come and save me, which, has the Normandy just been sitting here watching the asteroid approach the mass relay and doing nothing to stop it? They don't need me there to stop a massive issue from happening. Like, what? Why didn't the Normandy come help whenever they, like, realized Shepard's no longer in contact with them? Anyways, I have the hardest combat of this entire DLC, which is fighting a Ymir mech, which, who would have thunk fighting a Ymir mech with no allies is difficult, but it's not the first time I've done it throughout this run. I arrive at the comms tower and call in for the Normandy before having a conversation with Harbinger, in which he tells me that I'm only delaying the inevitable and does a bit of monologuing before I barely escape through the relay on the Normandy while the entire sector is destroyed. Oh, also, blowing up the relay killed like 300,000 Batarians, which sucks, but kinda don't like the Batarians anyways, so whatever. With that, I've completed the run answering the question, can I beat Aspect 2 using only abilities? Yes, I can. Thank you so much for watching, you're beautiful. If you like this video, be sure to check out my first Mass Effect run if you haven't already, and if you want to support the channel further, be sure to check out the channel memberships or Patreon, as the support from those two is tremendous. And with that, this is Willow, signing off.
Inside my own world of make-believe, kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I